Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. This segment is brought to you by GetValuate.com, online investment analysis. Well, today we're talking about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. What does it mean for employers? What does it mean for real estate and the economy? Please welcome my next guest, Dianne Umberger. She's a National Tax REIT Leader with Ernst Young. Dianne, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So what do you think is the most significant part of this tax reform?
I think the reduction of the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% is quite extreme, and I think that is probably the most significant part. That corporations will see a big and immediate impact on their bottom line. And as we all know, earnings drive the stock market, which we've already seen sort of some of that built in the run-up to this legislation. And just the ability for corporations to be able to compete globally, to create new jobs and grow. I mean, that's sort of the theory behind reducing that corporate tax rate. Another part of it is the sort of transition to a territorial system, and having a mandatory toll charge on tax-deferred foreign earnings, bringing those earnings back to the U.S. And for a time, there is going to be two different rates, one for cash and cash items and a lower rate for illiquid assets like plant, property, and equipment and real estate, property treated as real estate. And so I think that is a significant part of the whole purpose behind this act, lowering the tax rate and bringing money and jobs back to the U.S. and hopefully corporations will follow that and start to build again here in the U.S.
Okay. And what's the lowest rate that a company can bring funds back into the U.S. right now?
Well, they're subject to the regular corporate tax rate now. But coming back, there's going to be it's either a 15.5% rate in terms of cash and cash items, or with illiquid assets, it's going to be 8%. So a U.S. shareholder can also elect to pay that tax over a period of 8 years. So they won't get stung with it necessarily all at once.
Nice. We're talking with Dianne Umberger, and she's with Ernst Young. And Dianne, how might this act impact jobs? I mean, if corporations have a lot more money, are they going to hire more? Are they going to expand? Might it be an impact for commercial real estate and the REITs that own the properties?
I think that is certainly the idea that when the corporate rate is lowered, that corporations can be more competitive, that they will have higher corporate earnings. That will enable them to do more research and development, create new jobs. They have to put those people and that equipment somewhere. So there could be a positive impact on the demand for real estate and space. So if you think about office space, if you think about warehouse space, that could positively impact real estate. For REITs in particular, there's always REITs are always watching what the corporate tax rate will be. I mean, to be a REIT, it's a lot more than just what the rate is. So a 21% rate, I think will not negatively impact a company's decision to be a REIT. And there are some provisions in fact which we'll talk about, which I think are certainly beneficial to REITs.
Okay, well, excellent. Well, what might be the impact of abolishing the penalty for not having health insurance that Obama had put in place?
Well, I think there is a lot of speculation about that right now. I've been listening, as you probably have as well, as to what what the potential impact will be. I think immediately, without having that penalty, it's going to put the burden back on the individual. They'll have the choice whether they're going to obtain health insurance or not. I think the whole health insurance area, though, as we know, is a lot more involved in that than that, and there's going to have to be a lot more work done in terms of where these premiums are going, and to get something that makes sense and is affordable and is accessible for Americans. Because right now it is, it's certainly not working. Right. But I think that abolishing the penalty was seen as, a step that this Congress could take under reconciliation, because it can't simply repeal the entire Affordable Care Act under reconciliation.
Right. And this act does a lot of things. There's a lot of changes. It's kind of a historic change in tax reform. So, Dianne, what are some potential headwinds? What are some potential negative issues from this?
Well, I think it'd be only fair to recognize that the limit on the ability to deduct state taxes and property taxes, it's now going to be a combined limit of $10,000. And in those states where the property taxes are high and the income tax is high, that is seen as a potential negative effect of the legislation. So, for instance, states like New Jersey and New York and California, we'll see an impact there if they have, high incomes and they live in homes that have high, subject to high property taxes. But the decision to where to work and where to live is a lot bigger, than just the amount of taxes that you pay. So I think it just remains to be seen whether this will have any real effect on behavior.
Yeah, I agree. Home is home, right? It's hard to leave.
I wanted to mention the impact on REITs. There is a new deduction that will allow individuals to deduct up to 20% of the ordinary dividends that they receive from REITs. It's definitely seen as an incentive to invest in REITs and along with other pass-through and small businesses. And so, but unlike those small businesses like C-Corps and sole proprietorships, there isn't a phase-out for high-income earners when it comes to the dividends received from REITs. So that's a good provision.
Yeah,
for REIT investors.
Yeah, it seems like an excellent provision. And when will employees start seeing an impact in their paychecks from these tax changes?
I think what I heard and have been seeing is really when the new withholding comes into effect, which would be, I think, the first week in February. And I think that's what the messaging has been, to look at that as being sort of the first time individuals can actually see something in black and white. But I mean, anybody that invests in the market, I think, is just keep an eye on that as well, because the market is always responding to change, and I think it is doing so and has been during the run up for this legislation.
Right. Well, Dianne, what would be your parting comment for our audience regarding this historic tax reform?
I think as a whole, I think don't look at any one provision. I'd say step back and look at the overall corporate rates, the overall individual rates, which we didn't really talk about being reduced. In the context of some of these other limits on other deductions, and when you sit back and take a look at it as a whole, combined with the people's individual investments in their own real estate and in the market, in their 401k plans, to see what the overall impact will be, but, before you just sort of look at one provision and say, oh, this is negative, so it's not going to help me. Because there are other things. There are things like the estate tax exclusion has been doubled, so that will help families with farms and property to leave to their children. And then the ANWR, we didn't talk about that, but that could certainly, the people in Alaska were happy about that. That got into this legislation as well and could impact our energy. So I think there's an awful lot in here. And so I would say just sort of don't look at any one provision in exclusion. Kind of have to step back and look at the whole picture.
Yeah, very good tip. Dianne Umberger with Ernst Young, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
And thank you for joining us around the country on iTunes, YouTube, radio stations, podcasts, however you're joining us. Maybe you're on our website, CREshow.com. What are your comments? What do you think about this tax reform? Comment on these podcasts, on these videos, or connect with us on social media and let us know what you think. And until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh, and join us for America's Commercial Real Estate Show.